The puppet is either the most important animatronic in FNAF or the worst mistake Henry Emily ever made, and the answer is both. Without this thing, none of the other suits would be haunted at all. The puppet is the origin point. Everything starts here. It's possessed by Charlotte Emily, Henry's daughter, and the first child William Afton murdered. Henry built the puppet specifically to keep children safe, to stop them from leaving unsupervised. After Charlotte is killed outside the restaurant, her spirit bonds with the machine that was supposed to protect her. The tool meant to prevent tragedy becomes the vehicle for a murdered child to fight back. Here's where it gets weird. The puppet doesn't just haunt like the others. The Give Gifts, Give Life minigame in FNAF 2 shows it literally distributing masks to the corpses of the missing children and giving them life, facilitating their possession of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Golden Freddy. It's the in-universe mechanism for soul transfer, the spiritual administrator of the entire haunting. Without it, the classic animatronics remain inert crime scene props instead of nocturnal threats. Its later fate cements that centrality. Henry eventually has Lefty constructed specifically to capture the puppet's soul. By Pizzeria Simulator, it's drawn into Henry's final pizzeria and destroyed in his purging fire alongside Afton and the remaining major animatronics. The force that first weaponized the classic suits against Afton also participates in the orchestrated end of everything it accidentally created. But if you think One Guardian Ghost is complicated, wait until you meet the mascot whose name is on every building and whose suit became the franchise's first walking crime scene. Freddy Fazbear. He's the face of the franchise. A brown bear with a microphone and a top hat, designed to look friendly and approachable. But that friendly appearance is exactly what makes him so disturbing once you know what's inside. Freddy starts as a simple fabric-covered animatronic built on a metal endoskeleton. Basic crossbeams, wires, suit parts stretched over a frame. By FNAF 2, that same suit has rotted into withered Freddy with torn fabric and exposed metal, because the company literally cannibalized its own robots for parts. Then Toy Freddy shows up, all glossy plastic and upgraded facial mechanics, representing Fazbear Entertainment's desperate attempt to rebrand after the missing children incident. Later versions get worse. Nightmare Freddy becomes a jagged-toothed horror with razor-sharp claws. Molten Freddy is a tangled mass of wires and eyes infused with the souls of multiple dead children. The core Freddy suit from FNAF 1 is possessed by Gabriel, one of the 5 kids murdered in 1985. William Afton lured them into a back room, killed them, and stuffed their bodies into the animatronics. Parents later reported foul odors and fluids leaking from the suits' faces. The puppet channeled their souls into the robots, and now Freddy stalks the night guard, presumably mistaking him for the killer. Freddy's name is on the sign, so every disaster reflects back onto him. Gabriel's body is hidden inside the flagship mascot, turning it into a walking crime scene. The haunting persists through every rebranding attempt until FNAF 6, when Molten Freddy is finally lured into one place and burned. At least Freddy had a face. Chica, on the other hand, looks like something clawed its way out of a nightmare and forgot to bring its skin. Chica the chicken is one of the original 4 animatronics, possessed by a child named Susie, who was murdered during the missing children incident in 1985. But here's what makes Chica genuinely unsettling in a way that has nothing to do with jump scares. She's the only animatronic whose scariest moment in the entire first game happens completely off-screen. In FNAF 1, Chica spends a lot of her time in the kitchen. You never see her there. The camera is disabled, all you get is sound. Pots and pans clattering, metal scraping, something moving around in the dark. Because you can't see what's happening, your brain fills in the nightmare. Is she looking for you? Is she aware the camera's off? The game never tells you, and that ambiguity is more effective than any visual could be. Scott Cawthon understood that sound design can be more horrifying than visuals, and Chica's kitchen audio is proof. The clattering is rhythmic enough to suggest intent, deliberate enough to make you wonder if she knows you're listening. Chica becomes the one animatronic whose presence is defined entirely by what you imagine she's doing in the room you can't monitor. Lore-wise, her possession by Susie ties her into the same tragedy haunting Freddy, Bonnie, and Foxy. Her body was stuffed into the suit. The puppet gave her spirit life. She hunts the night guard because she mistakes him for William Afton. Standard haunted animatronic behavior. But the kitchen silence adds a layer of dread that makes her feel more unpredictable than the others. At least Chica stays in one location when she's in the kitchen. Foxy doesn't give you that courtesy. Foxy the pirate is either the most beloved animatronic in the franchise or the most tragic mistake Fazbear Entertainment ever made. Honestly, both are true. This is the only animatronic in the original game that's already out of order before Night Night 1 even starts, banished to Pirate Cove, and the game never tells you why. The official explanation is mechanical failure. Cool, but here's where it gets weird. Foxy is possessed by Fritz, one of the 5 missing children murdered by William Afton in 1985. Unlike Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica, who stay on the main stage, Foxy gets shut down and hidden behind a curtain. The game implies wear and tear, exposed endoskeleton, torn fabric. But Foxy's behavior is different from the others. He doesn't stalk you slowly, he sprints. The moment his curtain fully opens, he charges straight down the hall, and if you're not watching the cameras, he kills you instantly. That's not a malfunction, that's aggression. The community has debated for years whether Foxy was decommissioned because staff noticed something was wrong, or whether Fazbear just didn't want to pay for repairs. Either way, they kept him locked up rather than scrapping him entirely. By FNAF 2, he reappears as Withered Foxy, even more destroyed. His replacement Mangle becomes such a disaster that staff let children rip it apart daily and stop bothering to fix it. Foxy's legacy is pure abandonment, which makes his fan favorite status almost poetic. The character the company threw away became the one everyone remembers. But if you think one isolated pirate fox is unsettling, wait until you hear about the animatronic that doesn't even follow the rules of physical space. Golden Freddy. Golden Freddy is either the franchise's biggest mystery or its most useful storytelling loophole, and nobody can agree which. Unlike every other animatronic in FNAF, Golden Freddy doesn't obey normal physics. He materializes as a limp, empty-looking yellow bear suit with hollow eye sockets, appears in your office with zero warning, and crashes the game when you stare at him too long. That's not standard animatronic behavior. That's ghost behavior. The running theory is that Golden Freddy is possessed by Cassidy, the 5th missing children victim, whose body got stuffed into a spare yellow Freddy suit back in 1985. But here's where it gets complicated. Some fans argue there's not just one soul in there, but 2 or even 3, including the crying child from FNAF 4, and potentially a 3rd kid nobody's definitively named. The Golden Trifecta theory exists specifically because Golden Freddy's behavior is so wildly inconsistent with every other haunted suit that people assume multiple spirits must be fighting for control. What makes Golden Freddy genuinely different is the scope of his power. The other animatronics walk, crawl, or teleport short distances. Golden Freddy teleports wherever he wants, appears as a disembodied floating head, and an ultimate custom knight is heavily implied to be the one personally torturing William Afton's soul in some kind of supernatural purgatory. That's not Remnant. That's something else entirely. And despite the good ending of FNAF 3 supposedly freeing the children's souls, Golden Freddy refuses to move on. While the others find peace, Cassidy stays behind to keep Afton locked in an eternal nightmare, which means Golden Freddy isn't just a haunted suit anymore. He's become the warden of hell. But if you think one ghost running a torture dimension is disturbing, wait until you hear about the suit that turned William Afton himself into a walking corpse. Springtrap. William Afton spent decades hiding inside mascot costumes to lure children to their deaths. Then one day he became the costume, permanently. Springtrap isn't just another haunted animatronic, it's a spring-lock suit designed to function both as a wearable costume and a free-roaming robot. The internal mechanisms crank to the sides to create space for a human to climb inside. If those spring locks fail, the endoskeleton snaps back at full force, crushing whoever's inside into the machinery. Afton knew this. He built these suits. After dismantling the other haunted animatronics, Afton gets cornered by the spirits of the children he murdered. He panics and hides inside the old Spring Bonnie suit, the same costume he used to commit the original killings. The spring locks activate. His body is crushed, impaled, and fused into the endoskeleton while he's still alive. He dies inside the suit, and then the suit won't let him stay dead. By the time Fazbear's Fright opens decades later, the Spring Bonnie suit has rotted into Springtrap. Greenish fur, exposed metal, visible human remains wedged into the mechanisms. The man who weaponized mascot costumes against children is now physically trapped inside one forever, but he keeps surviving. He walks out of the Fazbear's Fright fire as Scraptrap, more of the costume peeled away to expose the mangled corpse underneath. Then he survives that fire too, returning as Burntrap in Security Breach. What makes Springtrap different is that the entity inside isn't a confused child. It's the killer himself, fully aware, fully malicious, and apparently unkillable. The trap didn't end him, it just turned him into something worse. Which brings us to a very similar but gender-swapped story. Circus Baby is either the most tragic animatronic in the franchise, or the most deceptive predator ever built, and honestly it's both at the same time. She was designed by William Afton as the crown jewel of Afton Robotics, a highly advanced funtime animatronic equipped with articulated faceplates, a retractable stomach claw, and internal mechanisms specifically built to lure and capture children. The childlike clown aesthetic, the ice cream dispenser, the friendly voice, all of it was camouflage for a machine engineered to kill, and it worked exactly as intended when Elizabeth Afton approached Baby for ice cream and was immediately pulled into the animatronic's stomach cavity, where she died. But here's where it gets complicated. Elizabeth's soul didn't just possess Circus Baby, it fused with Baby's AI, creating a dual consciousness entity that is both a grieving child and a calculating machine. In Sister Location, Baby guides the player through the facility with apparent empathy, positioning herself as an ally. But the entire time, she's orchestrating an escape plan that involves hollowing out the protagonist's body and wearing it like a suit. She leads the Funtime animatronics in merging into Enard, then uses Michael Afton's corpse as a disguise to walk out into the world. Elizabeth wanted her father's approval. Baby wanted freedom. The result is an animatronic that sounds like a scared little girl, but thinks like a predator who has spent years planning her next move. She's not mindlessly violent like the classic animatronics. She's playing chess, and that makes her infinitely more dangerous. But if you think one calculating soul trapped in a clown suit is disturbing, wait until you hear about the twisted endoskeleton amalgamation that crawls out of the sewer wearing Michael Afton's rotting skin Enard. 4 animatronics ripped themselves apart, fused their endoskeletons into one tangled body, and wore a man's skin as a disguise to escape into the world. That's Enard, and it somehow gets worse from there. Enard isn't a suit. It's what happens when Circus Baby, Funtime Freddy, Funtime Foxy, and Ballora decide they're done being trapped underground and forcibly merge into a single entity made of wires, rods, and salvaged parts. The result is a clown-faced skeletal nightmare with no outer shell, just exposed mechanisms and a single glowing eye. The design is horrifying because it looks perpetually incomplete, like it's still deciding what it wants to be. Here's the thing, Enard was led by Circus Baby, who used Elizabeth Afton's knowledge to manipulate Michael Afton into helping them. She walks him through it step by step until he's standing in the scooping room. Then Enard scoops out his organs, climbs inside his body, and wears him like a suit. Michael walks out of the facility, decaying as he goes, until Enard is forced to exit through a sewer grate. The body keeps moving anyway, reanimated by Remnant, but that's neither here nor there. After escaping, the collective falls apart. Baby gets kicked out by the others, splitting Enard into 2 entities. She becomes Scrap Baby, while the rest reconfigure into Molten Freddy, a wire mask carrying multiple child spirits at once. Both end up in Pizzeria Simulator, drawn into Henry's final trap, multi-soul fusion, body theft, structural reconfiguration, all on the table. But if you think a tangled endoskeleton wearing human skin is disturbing, wait until you hear about the animatronic specifically designed to capture and imprison the puppet. Lefty. Most people skip over Lefty because he looks like just another rockstar animatronic. Black bear, red hat, gold star on the chest, nothing special. But Lefty is arguably the most important animatronic in Pizzeria Simulator, and I can prove it. Lefty's name is an acronym: lure, encapsulate, fuse, transport, extract. That's not a theory. That's official blueprint data from the game's Insanity ending. Unlike every other animatronic we've discussed, Lefty wasn't built to entertain kids or kill them. He was built by Henry Emily for one single purpose: to capture the puppet. Here's how it works. Lefty's internal systems include a false sensory mechanism and a device labeled Dream Wand that plays a lullaby. These aren't stage features, they're bait. The lullaby lures the puppet into Lefty's frame, where it's sealed inside and transported to Henry's final pizzeria. Because the thing Lefty is holding, the puppet, is the entity that gave life to Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, and Golden Freddy in the first place. Without the puppet, none of the classic hauntings happen. Lefty is carrying the ghost that started it all. In the completion ending, Henry's final monologue directly addresses my daughter, confirming the puppet inside Lefty is Charlotte, and that this entire setup was a trap to free her soul along with everyone else's. Lefty isn't a character, he's a containment unit, a prison Henry built to end the nightmare rather than continue it, at least in theory, because if you think one meticulously engineered bear was enough to close the book on Fazbear's nightmare, Glamrock Freddy would like a word. Glamrock Freddy. After decades of possessed nightmares and murder machines, Fazbear Entertainment finally built an animatronic that chose to help a kid instead of killing one. And somehow, that might be the most disturbing thing in the entire franchise. Glamrock Freddy is the marquee performer at the Freddy Fazbear's Mega Pizzaplex, a neon-drenched corporate monument to ignoring every red flag in Fazbear's blood-soaked history. He's got the full 80s rock aesthetic, advanced AI, and a chest cavity large enough to hide a child inside. That last feature becomes very relevant. During Security Breach, most of the Glamrock animatronics get hacked by Vanny, a follower of glitch trap, which is basically William Afton's consciousness turned into a computer virus. They all go hostile and start hunting Gregory, the kid protagonist. Except Glamrock Freddy. He glitches out of the control system and becomes Gregory's protector, hiding him in his chest compartment and actively fighting the corrupted animatronics. This is completely unprecedented. Every major animatronic before him has been a passive victim turned vengeful ghost, a programmed killer, or a corporate mistake. Freddy is the first one to actively choose protection, even at cost to himself. Whether he's genuinely a well-programmed robot whose child safety protocols beat glitch trap or something more human is living in there, the games never settle. What is clear is that the Pizzaplex runs on something that behaves a lot like Remnant, meaning even the clean new animatronics are probably contaminated by the same energy powering murders since 1985. But if you think one heroic bear is enough to fix decades of digital possession and soul harvesting, wait until you hear about the AI that learned to mimic human grief and turned it into a hunting strategy. The Mimic. The Mimic represents the point where Five Nights at Freddy's stops being about haunted robots and becomes something worse. Introduced in the Tales from the Pizzaplex continuity, it's not a mascot suit, it's a skeletal endoskeleton with adaptive algorithms that can copy the movements, voices, and behaviors of any animatronic or human it encounters. It doesn't need a body, it just takes whatever shell is convenient. Its AI exists in 2 iterations. M1 mimics a dead woman named Fiona, growing increasingly sentient over time. M2 is created at M1's request to replace a dead child, but instead of recreating innocence, it learns violence. The entire system is trained on grief and trauma, turning emotional agony into executable code. It's a haunting built from data. What makes the Mimic genuinely terrifying is its ability to manipulate through imitation. In The Secret of the Mimic, it impersonates a Fazbear dispatcher over the radio, guiding the protagonist Arnold through a costume warehouse while pretending to help him. Every reassurance is a lie built from stolen speech patterns. It doesn't just kill, it learns how to sound like someone you'd trust, then leads you exactly where it wants you. This is the franchise's logical endpoint. You started with a guy in a rabbit suit luring kids into a back room. Now you have an AI that can wear any voice with no single point of failure, and it was built by a grieving father trying to cope with loss, not a serial killer trying to live forever. You don't need malice to build a monster. Grief and cutting-edge technology are enough. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.